G7 signed on with us on NEPAD. It was good. We moved from there. On NEPAD, we had something that, again, was unique. Africa Peer Review Mechanism, which allows us as a body to look at each other in the face and say, hey, what you are doing is not good enough. And we use it to a great advantage. I must also say that one of the things that happened at the turn of the century was Africa accepted reform as something that doesn't need to be imposed, but that we have to do on our own. And we did. And of course, democracy started growing. And democracy has now become the rule. And anything less than democracy is an exception in Africa. So these are the major planks, to my mind, that started to steamroll Africa into the economic growth that we have. But what has this economic growth done? As we have heard today, Côte d'Ivoire is a typical example. Growing at the rate of 9% and expected to grow at the rate of 10%. And maybe the way, and I will talk a little bit about Côte d'Ivoire before I conclude my statement, maybe the way Côte d'Ivoire is going might even reach a growth rate of 12%. But when you get that to start to that stage, and you must remember Nigeria. That's all I will say. We are growing. As also it has been said this morning, that growth is mainly rooted in commodities, particularly mineral commodities. I think it's my brother from the African Development Bank that said, this is now irreversible. We must not be so categorical, because we made that mistake in the early 60s. We were growing well immediately after independence, based on essentially on agricultural commodities. Late Mwalimu Nyerere, before he died, said in 1963, the amount of coffee he had to sell to buy a tractor. By 1975, he had to sell 4 times that amount of coffee. Now, and that was one of the reasons why we could not continue to grow at the rate we grew, at the rate we started. So we must bear that in mind, that the growth that we have now is not family-based enough. Growth that is only based on Chinese, Indians, or people from anywhere else coming to our land, digging out our minerals and cutting them away to beneficiate them, to add value to them, while our land is being left degraded after the mineral has been taken out of the land, is not good enough. We want value added in Africa to this mineral. Another thing that I want to say about this growth, before I move on, is that demographics can be an asset or a liability. In the colonial and pre-colonial days, our forefathers went for large family because they needed extra hands on their farms. And the larger your family, the bigger your farm. Today, demography can be an asset if our youth, our children are well educated, if they acquire skills, and they are empowered and employed. But growth that does not take employment into consideration is a hollow growth for us in Africa, and it's dangerous. Because 60% of our youth population are unemployed. And with that, we are all sitting on a keg of gunpowder, ticking away. So I will say that our growth must also not just, or our development must be reckoned not only in terms of GDP growth, but also in terms of economic and social satisfaction for our population. Let me now talk a little bit about attractions for investment and business in Africa. I've talked about population. We have men and women. Most of them are well educated. You have seen them here. Most of them are reasonably skilled. And the cost of labor is still comparably cheap. That's an attraction. I'm talking about demography. Those who will be in the market, labor market, in the next 20 to 25 years are already born. They are already born. There's nothing we can do about them. Unless, of course, we go to Syria and borrow some of their chemicals. And whoever does that, they'll be we had to face the wrath of the world for crime against humanity. So I hope nobody will do that. If they are already born, we now have to make sure that we provide for them. And they are there. One other attraction in Africa is return on investment. It's good. And it's very good. I am in a business that is not particularly too lucrative in agriculture. And if a farmer says it's not bad, you can take it that it is very good. Because farmers are always complaining. If they are not complaining about weather, they are complaining about government tax or government policy. Or they are complaining about late delivery of their Mercedes-Benz car. They are always complaining. So return on investment is good. Availability of raw materials. I've talked about natural resources. It's there. But as I said earlier, we need to add value. Relative security and stability, and I say relative because, again, we should not be complacent. I never thought that what happened in Mali would happen. I was in Mali 2 months before it happened. I spoke to the president, who was looking forward to an election. And about 40 days before the election, we had Mali. Later, we had Central African Republic. But let me say that in the mood of where we are and what we are doing now in Africa, maybe we should regard this as aberration. Because we're talking about political stability, democracy, elections, and all that. In the last 2 years or thereabout, elections have taken place in more than half a dozen African countries where people had thought that things would not go well. I won't talk about Côte d'Ivoire, but we thank God that that was finally, eventually sorted out. But Senegal, it was touch and go. I was the chief observer for AU and ECOWAS. We were able to get it through. I was in Ghana as chief observer for AU. We were able to get through peacefully. I was in Zimbabwe. Actually, I was scheduled to go to Mali. When the election of Zimbabwe came up, I was diverted to Zimbabwe because the chairperson of AU Commission thought that Zimbabwe may be more problematic than Mali. But it was almost more problematic than Mali. But it was successfully carried out. And so was Kenya. Maybe at this stage, that I have mentioned Kenya, our hearts should go to the tragedy that had taken place in that country, which is absolutely unnecessary. Absolutely unnecessary. And it is probably one of the things that we will regard as challenges that are still there in Africa. Sudden happenings, like the situation that took place in Kenya last Saturday, or the situation that started in my own country about 2 years ago, something called Boko Haram. We came from the blues. And when I went out to the northeastern part of Nigeria where they were based, I said, look, why are you doing this? They said, well, why are you asking us? When you were there, we didn't do it, and we were alive. I said, but why are you doing it now? They said, when you left, the government that took over from you decided to hunt us and kill us, so we have to defend ourselves. That's how it started. But it has assumed greater proportion than that now. It has been internationalized. I'm still talking about attractions, land. 60% of arable land in the world today is in Africa. That's something. That is something. And of course, as I said earlier on, reasonable political stability. What should be the areas of interest, or what should be what Africa would want our development partners and those who are interested in development or investment in Africa? What area? Oil and gas is, of course, known. Mining is known. But even oil and gas, there's no reason why we should not export our oil substantially refined into a substantially refined product. Other countries do that. Agribusiness. I talked of land earlier on. For us in Africa, agriculture should be the mainstay of our economy. Whatever else we may have, and of course, agribusiness, because we now talk of agribusiness not in terms of getting the commodities and cutting them away, but adding value, processing them, and creating jobs through the chain value and through the addition of value. There are other areas that I would want to mention. Infrastructure. When I come to talk about the challenges, I will also mention infrastructure. But then, infrastructure could be a challenge and could also be an opportunity. I would rather see it as opportunity rather than challenge. Because I always say to people when they come to me in Nigeria and say, look, which area should we go into investing in Nigeria? I say, you know, if I'm 25 years younger than I am, and I have unlimited resources. I will invest in power, energy, and I will build whatever, whether from solar, from wind, or from coal, or from gas, or whatever. I will build about 40,000 megawatts of electricity. I will try and do that within 10 years, which will mean I will make me 15 years younger than I am now. And then I will go to an island and be living there because I would just be minting money. Because here you have Nigeria, a population of over 170 million, and all the power that we can generate today is less than 5,000 megawatts. South Africa, with a population of about 50 million, is generating about 45,000 megawatts. And yet, South Africa is an industrializing country, not yet an industrialized country. You can see the vast opportunity. And when the minister was talking earlier on, he talked about power. And transportation. All means of transportation. Water. Property development. There is none of our countries in Africa that is not crying for property development. I was in Côte d'Ivoire about 2 weeks ago, Minister. And President Ouattara was telling me ADB is coming back. In fact, I think they have started the process of coming back. We will need 2,000 housing units. That's a challenge. That's an opportunity. And I said, will the land be available? He said, look, if you want the land now, I will give it to you. Anywhere you go, that is a problem. Education. Education is a social service, but it can also be an economic venture, because all our countries are encouraging private investment in education. Health sector, I think somebody asked about that earlier on this morning, and I've talked about processing whatever we produce, manufacturing, communication, technology, services, financial services, banking, logistics, storage, all aspects of services. These are areas that are crying for investment. I said I will talk about challenges. Yes. I will start with infrastructure again. As I said, it's a challenge and an opportunity. We have 55 countries in Africa, 54 in AU, and Morocco is not a member of AU by choice. So we have 55. That is a challenge, because you shouldn't see Africa as one country. The rules, the laws, the regulations are different. even the language. Amina lives in the east of Nigeria, neighbor. Republic of Benin is west of Nigeria, neighbor. Niger and Chad, north of Nigeria, neighbor. I cannot communicate with them. It's a challenge. And let us call a spade, though. Corruption is there. It's a challenge. But what I always say is that there's nowhere in the world where corruption has been completely eliminated. But there are many places in the world where corruption is not a way of life, provided we see it for what it is. It's not something to be condoned. It's something to be fought. And we are doing our best to fight it. Then there's nothing to worry about. It's when we ignore doing something about it that it becomes dangerous. Security issue, in some places I've mentioned that. Although there's labor, there's demograph, the quality of labor in some areas may not be as you may want to have it. I've talked about sudden implosion or explosion or whatever we will call it, violence. There's also the issue of continuity of policies. It is very important. What I used to hear, particularly in my own country, from time in the past, it's not happening too much nowadays. For the first time ever, when a government comes, for the first time ever, as if nothing had happened before. There's nothing for the first time ever. Nothing. There must be continuity and consistency of policy. Otherwise, nobody will want to invest. Then, of course, the attitude, particularly attitude of public servants, civil servants. They used to think that they are doing you a favor when they give you information on what you need to invest and to do things. No. We need reform in that area. As I said earlier, we have to turn challenges to opportunities. One thing that is happening now that wasn't there 20 years ago is that we now have African investors. In my own country, in the last 12 years, we probably have made or created as many as a dozen billionaires. Billionaires not in African currency, but in dollars. Babaka, when you and I were working in the 70s, there was no billionaire in Nigeria. Today, if you don't believe, you see the like of Aliko Dangote. They're there. So when you want to invest in Africa, and somebody said that earlier today, talk to those who are already there on the ground, African investors or foreign investors who are on the ground. If they tell you it's not too bad, then you know it is very good. Because normally they will not want you to be competing with them. And they tell you it's not too bad, you know, it's very good. But you can learn something from them.